All right, so if I wasn't nervous before, I'm still not nervous. Good morning, Grand Bahama. I am Christie Powell. Thank you to Senator Thompson for this amazing opportunity to be a part of the change. As I mentioned yesterday, I started my career as an associate at Goldman Sachs in the engineering division. And one of the products that I'm really, really passionate and proud about that they still use at the firm, even after my tenure with them, was it was really our responsibility to figure out how do we tell the differences between HP and Dell? How do we know if we're going to move from a distribution of Linux from version 5 to version 6? And we ran a bunch of regression test analysis before the firm actually made a decision on which platform they were going to go with. And I'm proud to say that I've traveled the world talking to people about that product, and they still use it from coast to coast and country to country. I took a sabbatical, and now I'm at Google as a senior technical account manager, and I confessed to all of you yesterday that I troll you, so I'm the person behind all of those ads that you see. And I've been at the firm now for 3 years. So what I want to talk to you a little bit about today is bridging the digital divide. And at Google, we're 100% passionate about this, and it's also something that's very passionate and near and dear to me because as a small business, you know, I recognize the limitations that you guys have, and you kind of have to just settle for what you can get in the Bahamas, even though it may not be world class. But having worked at very large institutions in the world, obviously we employ very, very smart people, and we have a lot of really talented engineers, and so we could just sit down and think through problems. What people, and you know, when you think of Goldman Sachs, people often think it's a bank. I mean, well, it is an investment bank, right? But you probably think that the largest arm of the company was investment banking and sales, but it was actually the engineering department. And we employed 10,000 people out of the 30,000, and the other 20,000 were just spread across the business units. So that gives you an understanding of just how important technology was to the investment bank and how important technology was to that industry. Now, obviously, fast forward, 7 years, and here I am working at Google, the #1 tech company in the world. So absolutely, living the life of an expat can be very exciting. The experiences and challenges of living abroad change you. You develop as a person, learn new skills, enhance capabilities, and create new meanings in life. It allows you to gain an appreciation for global differences and gain perspective on new opportunities for the Bahamas. Some can argue that we fail to keep up with technology advancement, but where others see failure, I genuinely see an opportunity. The technology revolution has yet to reach and integrate with all of the businesses, households, and the lifestyle of Bahamians. This deficiency has created an alignment where we as a nation can seize this opportune moment to take the lessons learned from other countries and ensure that it is better in the Bahamas. Today, I'll take you on a journey to explore the Bahamas' prospects for bridging the digital divide. The divide refers to existing economic and social inequalities that impact our access and ability to leverage modern information and technology. Social inequalities result from an uneven distribution of wealth, where a person's social class determines whether or not they have access to the world's information. The economies of scale allows large companies to employ and retain top talent to expand their technology capabilities, while small to medium-sized business owners may recognize their inefficiencies but lack the means to implement change. Often the solution to technology challenges lie in broad and expansive thinking. You're cruising along, and then technology evolves, requiring you to quickly adapt. When change is recognized as an opportunity, we stretch, we grow, and we potentially create something that the world can't live without. Steve Jobs, founder of Apple, gave the world a computer inside the home. How many of you have a computer inside your home right now? You can't live without it. Mark Zuckerberg gave us Facebook, a medium to stay connected. How many of you are on Facebook right now? Jeff Bezos gave the world its first online megastore with Amazon. How many of you shopped online last night? My question to you, though, Grand Bahama, that I ask is, what will Grand Bahama give us? We've spoken and I've heard about the tech companies that you want to bring here. But I ask you, what about the tech companies that are going to start here? Here in the Bahamas, we have industries with challenges, but when we apply creative solutions, we can move the needle forward through innovation. Albert Einstein said, "We cannot solve our problems with the same thinking that we used to create them," which means that we must put on our thinking caps and never take them off, and I believe that it truly starts with this tech summit. Let's take a closer look at 3 industries where we can compete globally by leveraging today's technology to transform the way we do business and conquer the digital divide. We'll explore education, finance, and public service. Trinika Roll, I met her randomly at the National Society for Black Engineers conference last year. I was walking around in my Google t-shirt and I saw a Bahamian student with the flag on their back. And I'm like, whoa, Bahamas? Can't, no way, who are you here with? I immediately connected with her and I was so pleased to find out that she's leading a NSBE Junior program and also leads a camp called Beta in the summer right here in Freeport. How amazing is that? Trinika and her team have all engineering backgrounds. They've all studied abroad, and what have they done? They've returned home. They're looking for an opportunity to make a difference, and they understand that it starts with education, but they understand that it starts with you. Finance. I don't recall, but I believe it was Kimberly who spoke about it yesterday about having a microfinancing platform that they started in Haiti. How many of you in here want to be an entrepreneur? How many of you in here have money to be an entrepreneur? Wow, look at that. I'll share a story with you. I called a local bank a couple months ago, and I said, hey, I'm looking to start a business. I want some money. They said, how much do you need? I said, 100,000. They asked me how much money I make. I told them. I never heard from them again. I called a month later. I said, hey, I want to buy a car. How much money do you need? 100,000. How much money do you make? I told them. They called back. That's a problem. That's a challenge. How do we fix it? Microfinancing. All across the world, microfinancing platforms allow businesses, regular consumers, people just like you and me, to donate $5 to someone else who may want to start a cotton picking farm, whatever it is that they want. So the idea is, if I donate $5, Senator Thompson donates $5, and we get 100 people to donate $5. 5 times 100, 500. That person who couldn't get a loan from the bank because they don't have any credit now has $500 that they could go and start their business. Third industry, public service. How many of you, maybe 2 years ago, had someone knock on your door and say, excuse me, can you tell me your first name, your last name, how many people live in this house, how much money you make, what gender are you? Oh, it happens, right? And the person came in, you invited them in, you sat down, you gave them a piece of coffee or maybe a cake, and they took that information on a pencil with a piece of paper. And you're looking at them going, really? A pen, paper? And now you have to go back and manually enter that data into some Excel spreadsheet in a government office? Let's think about that for a second. No, we don't have to think about that at all, actually. We know what's wrong with that picture. So let's think about that. Fast forward 2 months from now. Someone is in your house digitally collecting that information. But not only are they digitally collecting that information, it's being automatically persisted to a database. There's some smart person who's writing some programming language in R and running statistics and regression analysis against it immediately. We're constantly worried about government layoffs. But the truth is, yes, I've now put that person out of a job who may have been note-taking or who may have been entering in data, but guess what? They're now doing something a little bit different, and they're growing and learning at the same time. The digital divide is the space between people with computers and those without. It's the space between using technology and turning a blind eye towards it. The divide is real, and we must take steps to close it, both nationally and internationally. I've shared those examples with you to prove that we can get there, Bahamas, but how, you ask? For those of you that already have businesses at Google, we have some tools, and I'll go through those right now, if I could figure out how to use this clicker, because trust me, I haven't used one in a long time. All right. Google's mission was to organize all of the world's information. There were 2 guys huddled in a basement, and they were in school. And a part of that challenge and frustration was they wanted access to textbooks that they didn't have access to, and they hated going to the library and waiting to get it. So that what they actually started off with was an idea that they could get all of that data and make it available to all of the students. At the time, I don't know how many of you, well, most of us in here are probably old enough to remember Netscape. There were probably only about 8 to 15 web pages on the world, on the internet at that time. And so they also indexed those pages. Now here it was, two guys who had a dream, and like Xerxes, they took nothing and they made it into something, being magicians. Now, fast forward 18 years later, we're a full-grown company, 75,000 people all across the world, and we're now making the internet free. Google's diversity strategy. How many of you use Google search? Every hand should go up. All right. How many of you speak another language? Awesome. I don't, but good for you. You would appreciate, though, that if you do speak another language and you were trying to go to a web page, that we do have an option called Google Translate. Now imagine if Google only had people working for them who only spoke English. Do you think that would have happened? Probably not. Diversity in our tools, diversity in our backgrounds, diversity in our socioeconomic classes forces people at Google to think differently and creatively about products, which means that we create the best products all the time. My point to you is, though, especially to the students, just because you may have come from a different background than somebody else doesn't mean you don't deserve a seat at that table. We, at Google, and a part of why it is that I'm here today and why I was so proud when Senator Thompson reached out, and I don't see Raquel in the room anymore, but wherever she is, we have an initiative at Google called Bridging the Digital Divide, which is what I'm talking to you about today. And what we're really trying to do with our mission is bring our tools into the forefront so that people understand that they can compete on the same playing field as the New York Times or the Atlantis Hotel or the Nikes and the Adidas of the world. Because we have these tools and they're actually free, but underrepresented areas as well as minority-owned businesses and nonprofits don't necessarily have access to a Googler that they can say, hey, can you help me one-on-one? And so that's kind of what I'm doing today. So hopefully you could use some of this information right away. Today's agenda, talking about your online presence. We're going to go through Google My Business. I'm going to share with you some of my pet peeves. We're going to talk about Google Adwords. And then lastly, we're going to cover G Suite. Your online presence. How many of you own a business? How many of you have a website? All right. How many of you, out of the numbers who raised their hand who have a website, how many of you know if whether or not your website is mobile responsive? Less hands go up. Interesting. A couple of years ago, Google decided that we were going to focus on being a mobile-first company. And what that meant is when I visit a web page and I'm checking from it on my cell phone, and I can't really read it because I have to scroll to the left, scroll to the right, scroll up and down. The challenge with that is you have a higher bounce rate because I'm going to leave your page because you're not mobile responsive. Does that make sense? So it's about making sure that your web page can be seen on a desktop, can be seen on tablet, and it can also be seen on any device. You have to be a part of that conversation, and we don't want you to be left out. So 80% of our consumers are searching on desktop, which means that they're probably sitting at work when they should be working, probably searching on Google, but we'll hope they're doing it for education. But what those numbers show us is that 80% of consumers are using it on their mobile devices, and 84% are searching on tablets. What does that data say to me? When I was booking my ticket to get to Nassau earlier this week, I did it on my train, on my subway going into work. Think about that for a second. I didn't go home. I wasn't in my house on my desktop. I was on my phone on the JetBlue app booking my flight and paying with my credit card. If 84% of your consumers are searching on tablets, again, it means that you have to be a part of the conversation. If you are not where they are, then you're missing out. Know your people, know your audience. We're going to talk a little bit more about this during the analytics section. But consumers want to know if you're open 9 to 5, if you're open 10 to 6. They want to know, how do I get somewhere? They want to know directions. They want to know a street address. I'll share with you a pet peeve. 2 years ago, I live in Nassau East. A Domino's just opened up right outside my corner. Literally, if I wanted to, I could walk there. I was in my bedroom. I had my smartphone. I had my tablet, and also had my laptop. And I was trying to find Domino's number, and I couldn't find it. Right? How many of you have been in New York, been to Miami, and you wanted to find a Pizza Hut or a McDonald's or a Macy's, and you put it in Google, and it magically came up? Every hand should go up. No hands going up? What's going on here? All right. Right? So it works. So in my mind, I'm thinking now, trying to find this Domino's, do I really want to get up and walk all the way to my mother's room to get the phone book? No. Needless to say, I did not have Domino's that night. So you know what happened to that Domino's? They lost a customer. They lost a customer. I didn't eat Wendy's because the line was too long. I think I just probably ate something in the house that night. But the point is, Google my business. This is what the free product, again. I gave this same talk with the Royal Bank of Canada maybe a year ago, and someone in the audience was from Domino's, and they heard it. They immediately took action. Let me tell you, the next time I went home and I searched for that Domino's number, it showed up. It was a free product. The idea here, folks, though, is if you own a business and you want to be found, again, you have to be a part of that conversation, but it's a free tool. All I'm asking you to do is register a picture, register your first name, your last name, give them a street address, give them a P.O. box, give them a phone number, a website. And if they're searching for chocolate or if they're searching for pizza, they're going to find you. And that's all a part of what it is that you need to do or that you can do right here in Grand Bahama, starting today. So everyone who has a business, I want you to go online and I want you to do it. Now, what do you think the #1 search engine is in this part of the world? Everybody shout it. Google. Exactly. So if you had to prioritize which search engine you wanted to be on, then you definitely want to make sure you're in Google. And by signing up for Google products or signing up for Google My Business specifically, you're automatically on Google Maps. You're automatically on Google Adwords, you're automatically on Google Plus, and you're automatically found on Google Search. So if you had to choose and you wanted to be found, you have to be a part of the conversation. And where are people talking? They're talking on Google. Google AdWords. When you search, it's because you want to know something. It's like, I want to go somewhere. I want to know what movie to watch. I want to know what shoes to buy. I want to know if there's a McDonald's nearby. And in those micro moments, you want to make sure that you show up, right? So I think I spoke to a young lady yesterday who said she sells chocolates, and I received a set of chocolates in my hotel room. Now, I would have never known that they make chocolates in Freeport, ever, unless she came up to me and said that. And I'm pretty sure if I search for chocolates in Freeport, she may or may not show up. But my point to you is she can go ahead and sign up for Google AdWords. But you need to know what are your goals, right? You need to understand what it is that you're putting out there, so you know whether or not people want to buy it and how to reach them. There was a schoolgirl walked up to me yesterday and said, "Miss, I have a blog." And before she said anything else, I said to her, "You want to know how to make money from it?" How many of you have a blog in here? A couple people? Okay. How many of you make money from that blog? All right. Your hand didn't go up, sir. So we'll focus on that. So you know that you want to drive more traffic to your website. You know that you may want to make money. You know that you want people to open your email every time. And these are all things that Google AdWords can help with because we're connecting advertisers to publishers. What is a publisher? A publisher is somebody who has a website. So we're saying, hey, I am the chocolatier in Freeport, and the Freeport News has space that I can advertise on, and so I want my ad to show up on the Freeport News website. Does that make sense? Kinda, sorta, maybe? All right. Before you all go running off and buying, again, AdWords, free. Before you go run off and sign up for an AdWords account, how many of you in here, local business owners, have advertised in the newspaper? All right, a few, but you guys know that you can advertise in the newspaper, right? So you go to the Guardian, you go to the Tribune, you go to any other local newspaper, and they say, hey, it's $400 for you to run an ad on a Tuesday, a Wednesday, and a Friday, right? But it's $600 if you want to run an ad on a Monday and a Thursday, because that's when the death notices come out. Okay, and then they're promising you, well, you're gonna get, we print 10,000 newspapers every day. But out of those 10,000 newspapers that they print every day, how many people saw your ad? They can't ever tell you that, no matter what they say to you. They can't ever tell you that. Digitally, however, if I say to you, you advertise with me, I'll give you 50 views every day. That means every time someone visits my webpage, I promise you, I'll show them your ad. That I can guarantee. That I can tell you. So regardless of what the newspaper tells you, just know that digitally is the way to go. How many of you play video games? Candy Crush. All right, all of the hands go up now. More so on the left-hand side of the room. You know that ad that you keep clicking X on so you could get back to your game? So the reason why we do ads at Google is so we could keep the internet free. So we could make sure that you continuously have access to the world's information. So we could continuously make sure that when you have to go on Google to look for your next homework assignment, that you find it. So please don't click my ad. Google Analytics. There were a couple of you in here when I asked the rhetorical question whether or not you have a web page, right? And there's a lot of buzz in the community right now about apps. So I'll take you through an example. I'll take you through an exercise. You have a website. Alive tells you, BTC tells you, 49% of the users in the Bahamas have an Android. 49% of the users have an iPhone, and 2% have something else. And I say to you, I want to go ahead and build an app. Do you go and build an app? How many people will just run out and build an app at that point? Probably don't. I know you all will at that point. But let's say you have a website, and I say to you, 70% of your users are coming from Android devices, and 30% of your users are coming from Apple. What do you do at that point? Which app do you build first? Exactly. But if you don't have the data and you're not equipped with it and you're not armed with it, you'll make a silly decision. You'll end up costing yourself a lot more money in the long run, as opposed to using the data that you have in the beginning. Google Analytics helps you do that. If you drop a little code on your web page, you could start to put your customers into segments. What do I mean by segments? All of us probably attend a party or a social gathering at some point, and somebody has a website telling them about an event. Let's say the Tech Summit. Let's say 2 months from now, when's Women's Month? March? Is it March? March? All right, March is Women's Month. So in March, Senator Thompson and Raquel say, you know what? Women in tech, that's what we're doing. And in March, we have the Grand Bahama Women in Tech Summit. And when a woman goes to that page, we want to say girl power. When a man visits that page, we want to say support our women. How do you do that? How do you know if a woman's visiting your page? How do you know if a man's visiting your page? How do you know if you got a girl who's under the age of 18, you should put that in pink, and if you got a girl who's over the age of 35, you want to put that in red? How do you know that? Google Analytics. And the only way for you to do that is to get that data, harness it, and use it. Google Analytics answers the who, the what, the how, and most of all, how do you make money? The value. Reports in Google Analytics gives you access to this data. You're able to mine it, you're able to look at it, you're able to use it. But my point to you is, first of all, you have to be using it. And if you're not using it, then you're missing out. My analogy, 100% towards websites, same goes for an app. If you're using an app and you have a page that you think a lot of people are reading, you're making a guess at that point. And that's not an educated thing to do. We want you to have a hypothesis. We want you to be able to prove that hypothesis. And at this point, if you could take a look at all of the pages and understand whether or not somebody's actually reading your content versus just hitting the page and bouncing away. Another good example of Google Analytics, when you guys go to shop on Amazon. Say you put an item in your cart, you go to check out, but your kids call, so you don't actually check out, but you go to read a newspaper, and suddenly you see that exact same item, and it's like, hey, I'm here. Like, don't forget about me. Come buy my stuff. That's exactly what they're doing. They're using retargeting, and they're making sure that you never, ever forget them. Smart moves by advertisers, right? G Suite. I've spoken to lots of small business owners, and I think you would have understood yesterday, a really big pet peeve of mine are those of you that run your servers in your basements or on campus, like in your offices. And then there was a young lady who asked a question from NEMA about BCP and the business continuity plans and processes, right? Move to the cloud. I'm not 100% sure what the policies are in the Bahamas, not 100% sure what the policies are around data protection and data retention. I do know, having spent some time in Tokyo, we were launching a data center at one point, and they had really, really strict laws about the data that they actually had to have it in Tokyo. And so what we did was we replicated to Hong Kong, and then we replicated to London, and then we replicated back to New York. If you don't have a strong data policy and the government is not requiring you to have your data stored locally, then why not put it in the cloud, right? Like there's no drawback from you doing that. I spoke to a school, a couple of days ago, and she said, I was like, how much did you spend for that server? She said $3,000. I was like, wow, how about you give me that $3,000 server, I mine some Bitcoin for you, and you pay $5 in the cloud for a server every month. And she was just like, oh, I need to fire my IT guy. And I'm like, no, that's not my message. My message was, you need to educate your IT guy. You need to force him to learn and grow a little bit more. How was work done 30 years ago? You took out a pencil and a piece of paper, just like that public service person who came to your door. They wrote it down, they stuck it in an envelope, they probably put it in snail mail, it made it someplace else. Somebody like Senator Thompson came up after it, marked it up, wrote up on red ink, put a Post-it note on it. He maybe even crumpled it up and gave you some good feedback after it. How do we do work today? Using Google. I write a document, I open it up, I send Senator Thompson a link, and he and I are editing it at the same time. Think about that. Think about the power in that. I don't have to wait a week. I don't have to send him an attachment. He can edit at the same time as me, and we could have instant collaboration. That's what we want. A young lady yesterday spoke about Google in the classroom. I do not have a slide on that. But it is very important that we understand what Google in the classroom enables that teacher to do. She could now have the dialogue with her students and her parents and other teachers beyond the classroom. Learning is an inevitable process. It takes time, it takes energy, but it's continual. And she can do that using Google in the classroom. Grand Bahama, I have shared with you 10x ideas in education, finance, and public service. I've given you tools to make your businesses better. Technology has the power to have a huge impact on our lives, but it's not a silver bullet. It won't fix or solve all of our problems. There's another part of the equation that some, if not all of us here today, can play. For us to truly take advantage of these tools, we need to encourage and invest in those with the ideas. We need to provide them with two things, mentorship and sponsorship, and two groups need to be a part of that process, government and enterprise. TechCrunch conducted a recent study in New York City, one of the fastest growing technology sectors, and concluded that mentorship is a secret weapon in those who made it and those who didn't. For a new business to be among the best, you need successful people who have reached that level to help impart knowledge to avoid making similar mistakes. The relationships that are the most prosperous focused on discussing major issues plaguing the entrepreneur's company. New founders in the Bahamas should lean on their predecessors to understand the intricacies of doing business in the Bahamas. While they may understand the technology, taking that product to market is a complex problem that a mentor can help with. Governments can and do play a critical role in spurring innovation and actively creating new markets instead of just fixing them. There must be advocates in government who believe that market failure justifies some funding of infrastructure and basic science. Recently, we created the Ministry of Science, Education, and Technology. I'm eagerly waiting to see the revolutionary changes in science and technology in our country, and I would bet that it would indirectly improve all of the industries I mentioned, education, finance, and public service. With the advent of this ministry, it seems perplexing that such limited intervention and public sector dollars have flowed downstream to applied research or providing early stage funding for companies. Some of the world's most famous innovation hubs, governments have played pivotal roles, envisioning and financing the creation of entire new fields, from information technology to smart cities. These types of public investments are critical in creating and shaping new markets. I challenge us as Bahamians to become a major innovation hub in the region. Success will depend heavily on solid collaboration and bipartisanship within and between our organizations and governments. When you think there's a better way to do something, find it. The challenge with technology isn't whether or not machines think. The problem is whether or not men do. Let's get creative, Bahamas, and change the way people think by giving them new ways to operate. Once we have an idea, it is time for us to stop being afraid of what can possibly go wrong and start being excited about what will go right. It is important for us to push the boundaries of what we know and what we feel that we can achieve. Somewhere, something incredible is waiting to be known, waiting to be discovered, and waiting to impact our islands. Thank you.